We're live.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Live.
I know, but it takes a second to happen.
Get cooking.
So super excited. We are here to chat with Emily Henry about her newest book, Happy Place. I am sure all of you are familiar with Emily Henry and her amazing books, Book Lovers, Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation, and Happy Place. So excited to chat with her about Happy Place. Let me see if we can find Emily on here.
Hi.
Here we go.
I don't know my hat wear.
No, don't wear your hat. Okay. Go live. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi! You did it.
It worked.
Now I just have to.
Hi.
I'm great.
How are you?
I'm in
Oh my
Cincinnati.
gosh.
Where are you?
Yeah, where are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. This is
Oh,
home
cool.
for me.
Is that home? All right.
Yeah. I
Home
think
slash happy
so.
place
I feel
or
very
mostly
lucky
home?
that my home is my happy place. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, but I mean, I think your home is also my happy place. Like I love, yeah, I'm there.
Come anytime.
That
Anytime.
is like just yes. Your home, I think, is a lot of people's happy place. It's like the life that we dream of.
Oh,
Oh,
golly. That's really sweet. Maybe let's just
We
have me
lucked out.
painted on the
Yeah.
ground. But
Yeah,
like,
right. That's a
Yeah,
backdrop.
this is just a
yeah,
filter.
green. Yeah, you're in
Yeah, we'll
a dungeon right
we'll send you the
now.
link.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Torture chambers.
Yeah, I have them chained up. And
Yeah.
No, but that's well, thank you. And we hear the best things about Ohio. One of our best friends
Cool.
is
Akron.
from Akron, yeah, and so we are due for a trip. So
Yeah.
Please
we
do.
will
Come
we'll do a
see
drive
me.
by.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of sort of like the tertiary Midwestern cities and just like, I mean, I love the coasts too, but I just think that there's something really like underappreciated about everything else in the country.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that Cincinnati's
Yeah,
a tertiary.
I don't think it's
Not even secondary? I don't know.
think
It's got some,
That's true.
pro
That's
sports
true.
teams and
Yeah,
all that.
maybe it's
That's
secondary.
pretty big.
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking of as secondary. I think like Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
we'll call it like secondary adjacent.
Yes.
It kind of covers all bases.
Well, thank you. I know
Yeah.
that you are a very busy lady lately, touring everywhere and doing all things with Happy Place, which we are so excited to be sitting and chatting about it. I read it, immediately was like, oh my gosh, dear. Like, I would be up late, I'd be yelling and then crying and laughing, and it elicits such like a wild response. I feel like as a reader, like I really felt myself like chatting with these characters and having like conversations like hourly, and he would be like, what the heck's going on? And so
I liked my wife for a little bit.
The
That's all
best
right.
compliment. Yeah.
And I joined, and I was like, okay,
and now,
all right. Now I get it.
now
I get it.
he's like, oh, aha.
Yeah.
So I have to say, like, what
you.
an enjoyable, amazing read to also be able to share it with my partner, and I feel like often it's labeled as like such a like rom-com female, but I feel like you really fit so many and checked so many boxes, and it was such a pleasure to read your amazing book. So
I feel like I wish I'd had this book 20 years ago when I was trying to understand the other sex. I feel like I got such a vivid picture, and it felt honest. It didn't feel saccharine. It felt like, okay, this is kind of real and raw.
So relatable.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And so for those of you joining in, which I'm so excited that so many people are here. And I'm sure majority of them have probably read and are familiar with the book, but do you want to do like a quick?
Yeah, so hold it up again. Happy Place is, there we go. I love how it looks like automatically photoshopped as soon as you hold it up because of how intensely bright it is. It looks like, and I'm just like, yes, I photoshopped my book into these people's hands. So Happy Yes, right.
Along with the back.
I am a professional Photoshopper. My book, Happy Place, is about Harriet and Wynn, who have been a couple for about 8 years since they got together in college. And, you know, they're sort of each other's twin flames. They're soulmates. They're the perfect couple who everybody kind of wants to be like them. Only they actually have secretly broken up and their shared friend group doesn't know that yet. And they have this upcoming annual trip to the coast of Maine. That's something that's really important to everyone in the friend group. And Harriet is planning to go alone and break the news to the friends finally that she and Wynn are no longer together. Only when she gets there, Wynn is already there. And it turns out that her friend's family is selling this cottage. This is their last chance to have this trip together, their last chance to kind of relive all of these special memories and just say goodbye to a phase of life. And so Harriet and Wynn agree that they will put off telling their friends for one more week so that they can have this perfect send off. And then they'll, you know, come clean after that. If all goes to plan, which it rarely does in books. And life, right? True.
And life.
In life.
It's a great mirror. I mean, I love from the get-go. I've never been to Maine. I have some friends who are from Maine.
Your showrunner.
Our showrunner on Walker is from Maine. And the only thing I knew about Maine was having read A Stranger in the Woods. So which is great. Set in real story, nonfiction.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was there. I felt like I could smell smells and hear sounds, and I really wanted a lobster roll. So I'm yet to get one since reading the book. But
it's so amazing. And I also, like, my introduction to Maine was mostly just fiction, like Stephen King specifically. So I had not gone before I decided to write this book, and I was like, this is my perfect excuse to go take a research trip. And no regrets about that. Always a good decision to choose a setting that you just want to go to. And it was so interesting because like I said, I hadn't been there either. And I've spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest because I have a bunch of family there, but seeing the New England coast was so strange because on the one hand, it looks very much like the Pacific Northwest, but then also like all of the architecture is totally different. The personality of the people is totally different. The food is totally different. You're just like, oh, this is a whole other world. But
like a simulation, like this alternate universe, but very similar but different.
The multiverse.
Well, we've never been to Maine, and I think you have such a beautiful ability to really encapsulate and like bottle up that feeling of being in Maine. Like I felt the salt water. I think there was something, I'm going to butcher what you wrote, so apologies, but it was like I think it was Harriet came out to the ocean and it was like the mundane waters of like the lapping of the ocean, but then the salt water hit her. And you could feel it was so visceral and you could really feel how the character felt in that happy place and in that moment and how special that was. I would love to hear about what that process is like. I mean, maybe it's just like second nature, but you have just this wonderful ability to really transport a reader to really feel and see and hear all about in all of your books in particular, especially like this town in Maine. It really just felt so real. And
being in Austin, it doesn't actually feel outside, like there's a cool breeze and seagulls around.
Yeah.
But reading it, I was
like dressing like Diana suddenly, and it's just 1,000 degrees and 100% humidity. Exactly. Like I said, I love doing research trips for that reason. I love to figure out what makes a place special. And I think, I wonder if it's the same actually for acting as it is with writing, that it's really these tiny details that make something feel real and lived in. And so to really connect with a setting, I would guess feels comparable to connecting with a character in a way where it's like you find these tiny little things that are real and you observe those. And so like my notes when I take a trip are usually just like lots of fat bumblebees in the lavender or whatever. That's like one of very few details I wrote down on a trip to Italy. I was just like, this will do the trick. They'll feel like they're in Italy if they read about the bumblebees and the lavender. But so I think it's I think so much of the work of a writer and an artist in general is just observing. It's observing on a very small level. And I think something I've been thinking a lot about lately is how, you know, we have a tendency to think that the vaguer something is, the more we feel like connected to it, because it's like, oh, anybody can relate. But it's like neither of you has even been to Maine, and reading it, you felt connected to it, because the more specific you get, the more that it's going to conjure something up in a person's memory. You know, like we've all had that experience of just like being in the car and the air conditioning suddenly smells a certain way, and you're like, I'm back on a family road trip to like Sioux Falls, South Dakota or something.
Yeah, I guess ironically, the smaller you get, the more micro you get.
Because even if it's not exactly something you know, it will still make you think of something that's like that's like your version of that thing. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. We've all had those feelings, not in, but we can relate to.
Well, and that's one of the things I really loved, and it reminded me, and I don't know how you felt, but just even our courtship, like the smells of when and that sort of thing. Like there's a smell of Abercrombie and Fitch that I'll never. That brings me back to when we were dating. And so, and it's just, it's that happy place, and it doesn't have to be. It's not the place. It's like that deep interconnectedness and joy that brings you to that memory. And
we fell in love in the Pacific Northwest in October. And I remember the feeling. I remember the cool, like the season was changing, smells were changing, the trees were dropping their leaves and changing color, and it kind of put my visceral feeling back there. You know, so I know that place. I think about it
so
often.
Real. That's so, such. I think smell is one. You know, it's a sense that gets underused in fiction, but it's like it really is the strongest thing.
Recall.
I mean, I remember when my husband bought like a specific detergent in the last couple of years, and I was like, this is the detergent that you were using when we met. And so I was like, we have to keep getting this. We have to keep getting this, because I hadn't thought about it in so long. But I was just like, it really is so true that there are those little things that will just stick with you. And even if you don't consciously remember them, it's so easy to trigger them. And being back in a familiar place or in a familiar like weather system, all of that, it really does bring things to the surface, which was what made like writing this kind of like second chance love story make so much sense, where it's like you're setting it in the place where these two people fell in love, and being like, okay, good luck not falling in love again.
That's a great note. I think we should, you know, we have 3 little ones, and so I think most of our detergent is just Costco bulk, because you're doing laundry 5 times a day. But maybe we should have one like jug of detergent from when I used to do the laundry.
Soak all the kids' clothes in the Abercrombie and Fitch cologne. Very sweaty children.
Also a good call.
I don't know. They'll be thinking, oh God. So I want to get back to the second chance love story. That is another not ingredient, but another
ingredient.
Wonderful like ability that you have of creating the backstory and really allowing your characters to grow over a long period of time. And it's so beautiful to go back and forth. And I really love, I don't want to do any spoilers, but I love that they're thrown together and so much unfolds. And as a reader, we get to really see that. I'd love to talk about that. And I also just want to say, like, I'd love to talk about how you see that world, and how as a reader, I feel like we see it, and we can see it like unfold like visually. I feel like it's so visual. So
oh my gosh. No,
I would love to.
It's
sorry,
a
that
great
was a bit
question.
jumbled on
my so hard to answer. I think this book was so hard to write because of those 2 timelines, but also specifically because it's like having this love story where you have to believably have these 2 people fall in love, believably have them sustain this relationship for so long, and then give them enough trials, or a big enough of a trial to believably split them up, without making it so that you're like, oh God, these people should absolutely not be together. And so in a way, it's like the much sadder version of like, it's like the saddest version of the story, right? Because it's like these 2 people who you can see all of the ways that they are so good together, and the ways that they love each other. But the things that break them up are so, they're just like, it's like a lot. I mean, we're going obviously spoiler light, but it's just like so many little little wounds. And I think when you're in a really long-term relationship, those things can build up without you even noticing, when it's not just like one big thing. Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a sexual relationship. It can be a platonic relationship.
Yeah. Micro.
And that's one thing that I got, you know, call it a love story, call it whatever. For me, it felt, I don't know, like a kind of a, let's call it adjacent between, strangely, like loss of innocence and coming of age. And it felt great because everybody was going through, each character was so fleshed out, was going through kind of a renaissance of some sort. And the way you approach the characters and their relationships and who they are as a person and who they are with each of their 5 other friends, it was all unique and different. And it almost allows, it kind of helped me realize I'm 40, I'm married, I've got kids. But I was like, yeah, like life is a series of second chances, you know, and you mentioned something towards the end of the book where love is constantly saying you're sorry and trying to make things better. And I feel like that's the way, and it's so true. And anybody who's been in an intense relationship with a friend or a sibling or a parent they love or a child they love or their lover goes through like, hey, you know, I'm not who I was 5 years ago. You are not either. It's time to see where we meet up right now. And that was really powerful. It was really powerful to go like, oh yeah, like you can have a coming of age at 40 and probably get 50 and probably get 60, probably 70. And the importance of leaving that space for somebody to learn and grow. And, you know, we met young single 20 somethings, and then we were married 30 somethings, then we were parent 30 somethings. Well, I'm just saying, like, we've had 10 second chances in the last 15 years to grow and be like, hey, I knew who I was before being in a committed relationship, but now I'm in a committed relationship. I know who I am in a committed relationship. Now I'm married. Now I have kids. You know, so you constantly evolve and grow, and you see so much of it, especially with the dual timeline situation that you laid out. You get to see who they were and why they're different and how they're different. And real friendship, you know, you get at odds with somebody. And I've always kind of said this, and this might sound sadistic or maybe masochistic as well. But like, if you haven't really been at odds with somebody, you don't really know if you're their friend or not, if you care about them. Because sometimes you'll have a little bicker and be like, nah, they're not worth my time. But sometimes you'll really get into it and be like, okay, that was something probably brewing in me, probably brewing in them. I'm seeing the year ago version of them. Maybe they're seeing the year from now, hopeful version of me. What do you say, future Harriet and past Harriet? And where do they line up in the here and now? And so that was really, it was really impressive. It was a fun journey to go on.
It's so interesting. I mean, you really touched on what is kind of my mantra constantly, which is the fact that I do think that every love story, right, is a coming of age. And that was a big realization for me because I started writing Beach Read, I think I was like 28 maybe when I wrote the first draft of it. And I was having like a coming of age, and nobody had told me that would happen again, like or right around 30. And then, you know, I got into my 30s, and my parents, I was watching them have this huge coming of age in their mid 60s. And that was really this huge revelation to me, because everybody tells you, you know, like your teen years are so tumultuous, you're transforming, you're figuring out who you are, you know, you go to college or you move away from home, and you have these experiences that kind of strip you down to the barest version of yourself, and you have to build yourself back up. But I didn't realize that if you are a person, at least who pursues like reflection and growth, that's going to be happening over and over and over again. And I, you know, a big part of wanting to write this book was that I am now in that age where I have a lot of friends who are making these huge decisions that will be, you know, kind of like permanent life directions. So it's like, I have friends who have kids now, but I also have friends who have gotten like hysterectomies and vasectomies and decided we're not having kids. And I have friends who are still on the dating apps and like in excruciating misery, like, and same with career. It's like, you know, I have people who are on, like friends who I'm close to who are on like their third career, friends who are sticking with what they've been doing since, you know, they were in their early 20s, and friends who are like, what am I doing with my life? Should I go back to school? It's just the first time that I'm kind of witnessing this huge transformation of the way that your friendships like kind of orbit. Because I mean, you know, you've got 3 kids. It's like, you can't just drop everything and, you know, fly to Rome or whatever. It's like, you have to Yeah, Cincinnati,
Yeah.
the
Cincinnati.
realm of
Yeah.
Ohio, at least. Maybe not the
Yes,
US.
the realm of
But
Ohio.
yeah, it really, like, life changes, and some relationships can't weather it, but the ones that do become so much deeper when you go through those multiple iterations of yourselves, and you're actually with someone, whether a friend or a romantic relationship that goes through those iterations. It's such a powerful, beautiful love to have loved someone when they were totally different. I mean, my best friend and I have been best friends since we were 10 years old, and we talk all the time about how it's so weird that we still work on any level when we think about all of the different versions of ourselves. And that's so rare, and it's so special
Yeah.
to find someone who, even when you grow in different directions, that love and bond is still there, and there's that mutual respect, and there's that space and that willingness to adapt. And yeah, so this book was just like ultimate love letter to all of the long lasting relationships in my life, but also kind of, a reckoning with,
Yeah.
yeah, with growth, with
Growth
being like, sometimes things do
and change.
fall apart and can't be put back together, or your lives do take you in different directions, and you just have to you have to stay flexible in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growth by definition requires change, right? And so I love, because you start the book out and she's obviously headed to her happy place, and she talks about the friends who, it's the type of friendship where they can sit in quiet and feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and how their bodies just know how to coexist in the same area with each other. And then as they get to spend more time with each other and catch up, it's clear that everyone is a little different. And I found myself doing this. I realized reading the book and reflecting on it, like I find myself going like, well, I kind of saved this friend as 35-year-old version of him, but now this way, like, what do you mean? And then going, wait a second, no, he's grown. He's changed. He's grown. I need to allow for that the same way I expect that of him. So this book kind of helped me forgive, not that it's my place to forgive, but friends and even myself for not being who I was 10 years ago. Go stay out till 4 a.m. I can't, because I won't function when the kids wake up.
Yeah, like 1.5
two-legged
hours
alarm
later.
clock jumping in my head. Yeah, and you start to realize as you grow and continue to come of age, which friends understand that and give you grace to keep changing, and they're like, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I've changed as well,
Yeah.
and you've changed. Okay, where are we now? All right, we'll see where we are in a year, and
it's so relatable, and you write just such relatable stories, and
universal.
Like universal, yeah. And I just felt like, I just craved to be in that, or I felt part of that circle so easily. I'd also like to know, like, what are your habits like as far as writing style? Like, I've heard so many different styles, from like the common one I most hear is like, I feel like
it's 2000. Yeah,
2000
is, well, actually, everybody's different, but mine is 2000. So I'm going with that. Maybe a lot of people do 1000. There are people who do 10,000, not me. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I am not
nobody
good with
thinks
numbers,
in
so
words. Nobody thinks in like word
not
numbers until you're forced to do that as like a writer. And I couldn't even tell you how many pages like 2000 words is. I have no idea. It's just that somehow that becomes the way that you measure for some reason. Yeah.
Just use
use
a
exactly.
larger
And you're
font.
like, pages,
It's
double spaced.
Not 30 pages.
Yeah. So I do stick to about 2000 words a day when I'm drafting, and that can take me, it can take me an hour if I'm just on fire, or it can take me like 9 hours. And so for me, that's why I do the 2000 words a day, is because I just have to push myself to hit that point, because I hit a lot of lulls in my writing process. And I recently realized that it's mostly just fear, where it's like when the book starts getting hard to write, I'm so afraid of messing it up that it would be really easy to walk away at any point, no matter how much time I've already put into it. And so by doing the 2000 words a day for the first draft until I hit an ending, whether it's the ultimate ending or not, that is like a way to just get past that fear of the first draft. And then when I have a first draft, it's usually terrible, and I set it aside. And then when I'm editing, there's not really like a hard and fast amount of work that I'm doing every day. It's just sort of whatever my brain will let me do. Yeah. And this one was really hard because of those multiple timelines, and not wanting it to be really clear to the reader which timeline you're in. But a lot of overlap as far as like where the settings are. And I actually didn't figure out the format of this book until we settled on this title, because we had different working titles. And in like the third draft, maybe, we decided it was going to be called Happy Place. And that's when like the Happy Place sections came into the book, and that just fixed the book. And I live for that moment when something just clicks and fixes it, but it's always so scary waiting for it.
Oh, sure. And then I don't know about you, but I always have that fear of commitment too. Like, it's like so helpful to kind of realign things, but then like making a commitment, whether it's like with a character choice or, you know, in a script or whatever, and you're like, shit, okay, guess we're going for it. Like, I have that perfectionism in me, so I'm always like, oh God. So it's like, it's exciting, I'm sure, to like, I don't know if you feel like this, but like realign, like, okay, I know I have to plant these seeds throughout. It's so terrifying. Like, should I have made that other choice? Or
I love something that you just mentioned. I loved, confusion's the wrong word, but when it would go between timelines, I love that you didn't specify, okay, here, because I ended up kind of feeling like Harriet. Like, hey, this is back, you know, 8 years ago, you know, July 19th, 2012. So on and so forth, because that's how life happens. You know, that's, you're here, and obviously we're in 2023, and our kids finished their school year yesterday, but you know, I might go jump in the backyard with them and chase them around and feel like it's 2015, and so my memories are of playing in the backyard with them. So it's so fluid that I love the kind of feeling of discovery every time, where, because you can be and I'm sure you find yourself here a lot, I certainly do, in a room with friends, all of a sudden you feel like it's, you know, before you even had kids, and you, I don't want to call it deja vu, because it's not exactly that, but it's this feeling of like, oh wait, I'm here. Like, this is now, and bring yourself back. So that was a fun part of the journey.
It was so seamless.
Yeah, and or not, I love that kind of like, oh yeah, this is what happens when you're with somebody you really care about, have a long history. You go back, you go right back there and have those same feelings.
Well, no, but I also think that's one of the, another favorite thing is that everything is so intentional in your books, but it's so seamless. I would imagine it, I mean, the amount of time I'm sure that you spend in like research and everything. I think that's really why I love your books so much, because they are so seamless that it feels effortless. It doesn't feel like, sometimes books, which are still great, but some of them are laborious, and you can feel that you're supposed to feel smarter, and you know, like I'm supposed to think. Like, yours are just so beautifully done, where I feel like you have moments where I literally can't wait to go back and read again and again. It's so comfortable, and that takes so much work, I'm sure, on your part to make it so effort. Like it's like a movie that I can't wait to watch over and over again. Like, this is definitely a book. I know, like, it's like my fried green tomatoes. Like, truly, and I'm just so excited. I know what I can only imagine what it took to write so beautifully and wonderfully to make it so universal for everybody.
I was recently talking to a friend about how my writing process was for this book and then for the one that I'm working on now, and it's this feeling of, I kind of keep feeling, or with this one especially, I felt tempted to just skate over the surface whenever I was editing it, because I knew that commitment thing. It's like, when I dig deep in, things are going to change. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm committing to a path for these characters, whatever. But I kept finding myself tempted to just sort of skim and make kind of small changes and whatever. And I had to catch myself and tell myself, you have to go deeper into these characters' minds. You have to slow down the process and really think about what they're thinking, go into their body and the sensations in their body and all of that. And it was so strange, because I've never felt resistant in that way. But I think it was because this book is just a little bit like heavier. It's a little bit more emotional, and I did have to actively work very hard to make it as immersive as I think it ended up being. So I'm really, really, really honored that it felt that way to you, and that you did get swept up in it, because weirdly, I had to invite myself to get swept up in it. I had to like make the space for that, and it felt like scary and hard. Thank you.
You did it.
Yeah.
You did it.
Imagine, yeah, you definitely
Thank you so much.
Nailed it. It's so well done.
I have a random question. Who is Emily's?
Oh, yeah.
Because I love the Hankisms, and one of those
That
things that
is
I
such
feel
a
like
good question.
upon reread will be
Yeah.
like, because I love the things that he say or
Right.
that were communicated through Wen or through Harriet.
Yeah.
Did you have a
Yeah,
certain
I love that you
person in
asked
mind?
that because
Can
no
you
one
say it?
has ever asked that. You know, obviously been doing a lot of, it's so exciting when I get new questions, and you've both had a lot of them. Yeah, right,
I'm
right.
sure you get
But you've
happy
given me
place
so
all
much
the time.
new stuff to think about. But Hank is very much influenced, at least by my own dad, who um, is just the gentlest, kindest, best man, and my grandfather too. It's sort of like both of them. And I remember, like, I don't know if this Hankism made it in or not, but I remember when I was getting married, this marriage advice he gave me was that marriage is a conversation and you can't ever let it stop. And I think about that a lot because it's like, it's so true. It's so easy to, and it's that same thing of kind of wanting to skim, like kind of wanting to skim over life and not do the hard thing and not figure stuff out and just be like, oh, I just don't have the energy. But the idea that it's like, no, you have to keep that conversation going. Just like you have to, you know, as you're changing, as you're growing, keep that other person within, you know, your most innermost thoughts and your emotional life and all of that. But there's a lot of little things about him that are sort of uh, my dad, and then also my grandpa. Like I had a couple of, so my grandparents live in Oregon, and a couple of years ago, I brought some friends we were like traveling, and we stopped and stayed with my grandparents one night before they flew home. And my grandpa that night like said goodnight to them, and he was like, love you. And like I knew he meant it. It was like he had met them for the first time that day. And afterward they both were like, that they were like, that kind of gave me like a little bit of like an emotional breakdown to just meet this really, really lovely, loving, warm 90-year-old man who's like, you know, it's just like what you dream of. It's like the kind of family you dream of having. And like, luckily I get to have that as like my grandfather. And, but, you know, Hank is the beverage king because my dad is the beverage king. It's like when you go over, he is like making the 45-minute long pour over. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm done with it. Do you want to make another one? Yeah. And he like built like kind of like he and my mom built like a little tiki bar in their basement. And yeah, just yeah, so fun and loving and generous and just great advice. So yeah, I'm so happy I got to talk about that because Hank is like one of my favorite characters of all time.
Big time. Yeah. Well, you're passing on your grandpa and dad's love and generosity and spirit through Hank.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I do feel like it's sort of more than any other book. You know, I'm never writing to preach anything, but I think this book is sort of like a how-to on like how to fight, and I think that's really big because realizing you know how few people get to see that modeled, like a healthy way of fighting and of confrontation. And so it's like confrontation is either really scary to us, or when we get triggered and go into it, we might be like brutal and cruel, and neither one of those things are ideal for long-term relationships.
And I love that you talk. I love that they also fight uniquely, you know. Some don't fight, some go to a church, you know. I don't want to spoiler or anything, but every character had their own way, and it's so true. Again, whether it's platonic or sexual, you know, you fight the way you fight, and somebody fights the way they fight, and you have to figure out what
like
the
a shared
underlying
language,
message is.
basically.
What they're trying to say, what they must be feeling, and I love that you address that. Like, hey, this isn't the way I like to do things, and you go a step further. You don't skim the surface. You go a step further, and like, and this is probably why I feel like I don't want to fight.
Right.
This was the model that I saw, and that was the model they saw, and it's the opposite. And so they're fighting differently, but fighting because we care about something. If we didn't care about it, then
and that
we just walk up the door.
That is going back to just kind of letting the conversation stop, being like, and it is okay to have relationships where, like you were saying, you get into a fight and you kind of realize, okay, this is going to take a lot of work to repair this, and I don't think that the bottom line is strong enough to withstand that, and it's time to just let go. But you know, you don't want to be that way with every relationship in your life. You want to be the kind of person who can recognize when something has enough value that fighting is worth it and put in the time and energy.
And who was, I never read this. I'll stop.
He's
I'm really excited. I forget which character it was that kind of, I'd never read this in a book or in an article, but I'd never read the viewpoint that, you know, there's that old timeless aphorism, like, don't go to bed angry, but sometimes people need to sleep on it.
Yeah,
you know, like sometimes it was Wynn said it. Did Wynn get it from Hank? I forget.
I think, and I don't know if I don't know for sure. Like I might have absorbed that from my parents. I'm not sure, but it's something I found to be true. It's like I'm such a fixer. I think a lot of people can relate to that. When it's like when somebody's upset, it's like we have to work this out right now. We have to talk about it. We have to whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll just make it nice. We'll make it nice and pretty.
Sometimes you just need time to know how you feel, and it's like a lot of times when I'm, you know, like I think probably mostly just like PMSing, I can be so horrible, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, oh, that's what's going on, and I walk back into the room and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like batting my eyelashes, like you did not deserve that. That wasn't about you.
Not that that's your fault.
It's just a minute.
Yeah, it's usually about contributing factors, right? It's like we're not going to solve this issue because there's
or it's like the middle of the night and you're like, anything I say now is going to be kind of colored by the fact that I am so tired.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
or had a cocktail or you know
whatever. Or three.
But no, but I did. I that was something that I loved too, because I feel often it's like, don't ever go to bed angry, and I'm like, that's bullshit, because sometimes you do just need to breathe and
and when it's written down, when you read it in a great book, you're like, see, I'm going back to this. I'm going to bed.
And just the idea that like when you walk away, you can say like, I just need a minute. Like, don't worry, don't be scared. I just need a minute. It's not like, but I think it is really scary when someone wants to take that space. For a lot of us, that, you know, triggers the fear of like, I've just lost them unless I kind of like reel them back in. So you have to have a safe, you know, a safe space to say, I just need a minute.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I loved it.
I don't want to take all of your time because I know you're busy. So we'll I mean, I can talk to you.
No, this is a great excuse to not have to watch our kids. So
and also discuss like my favorite book. So our new favorite book. Okay, so for me, I really, from the bottom of my heart, I feel like this is going to be a book I am going to read time and time again and always discover nuggets and feel like just happy, but also just like comfort. It's really a comforting book to me. I'm wondering, what are your comfort books? Do you have any?
Is such a good question. So this is like, it's like, I don't think that the book itself is comforting necessarily, but there is this historical romance that I love that like when I'm just not feeling like I can open myself up to a new story, I'll reread this book because I just think it's such fantastic writing and just so like sexy and fun and just fantastic. It's called The Luckiest Lady in London by Sherry Thomas. Hugely recommend it. It's like very morally gray characters, like kind of doing very bad things to each other, but like it's you know, it's a Regency romance, so it's like you can just sort of suspend some disbelief. Really good. A newer one that is, I think, a comfort book that will also just make me sob every time is Emma Straub's This Time Tomorrow, which is so gorgeous. I think you both would probably love it. It's basically about this woman who on the night of her 40th birthday, she goes to sleep and has this like weird experience, wakes up back in her childhood bedroom. She's 16 years old again. It's the 90s in New York where she like grew up, and her dad, who in the present timeline is like ailing and, you know, in ill health, is young again. And she thinks like, oh, I've been, you know, kind of sent back in time because my life at 40 is not really what I thought it would be. And here's like a chance to kind of pursue the love interests that I didn't pursue, or the school opportunities that I didn't pursue, or whatever, to just kind of like do it all over again. But it's also, you know, mostly that she's having this second chance to spend time with her father, who is this who was like a science fiction writer whose big like cult hit was basically like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure kind of thing. And I think it's called like Timekeepers or something. Is the name of his like the book within the book, and it's just very fun and very sweet and big-hearted. And you can just tell Emma's father, Peter Straub, is an amazing writer as well, and you can tell that so much of it was just like a love letter to him. So it's so good. It's so fantastic. Yes,
Peggy Sue Got Married.
It is. Yeah, and it's like the kind of book that when I was reading it, I was getting texts from people that I love being like, hey, do you want to go do this? And I'm like, well, I'm reading this book and I don't want to stop, but this book is also telling me I absolutely have to stop reading and like go have a barbecue. So it's beautiful. I highly recommend it. It just came out in paperback, so everybody should read that one.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody listen, read those two.
That one too, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of book within a book, I will be very, I don't want to say mad at you, but I'll be very disappointed if I never read Dying to Civ. So if you don't have a copy of it, then write it. I know you're busy right now, but if you don't put something on the page and Dying to Civ, and I will die on that.
On my conscience. There are too many people who would never forgive me, and like there'd be voodoo dolls of me circulating.
All I wanted.
You know what? I'm gonna work on that.
That's all I wanted.
I actually do have sort of a soft pitch for like a cozy murder mystery in my head that I've been kind of toying with. So I could probably work in some baking scenarios for Dying to Civ. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, just a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
You can do like 1,000 words a day. You don't have to do
commitment.
You know, but yeah, I want it ASAP.
What else?
I mean,
I know. Was there anything else that you want your readers to know, or I guess anything you want your readers to know, or when is it? We have tons of questions from readers like, what are you working on next? When is this coming out in paperback? Are you touring the UK? We got a lot of like, are you coming to the UK?
A lot of
I'm hoping that I was invited this summer. It didn't work out. I'm hoping maybe next summer that will happen. As for the paperback, I know that's a common question. I do not know. Probably it'll come out like in less than a year, but I don't know. It's not, not my decision. It's kind of like whenever the publisher thinks it makes the most sense. But the thing that I feel like, so I've been saying this a lot, so apologies to anyone who's like heard me say this a million times, but I feel like the thing that I really want this book to do beyond like everything we've already talked about is just kind of give people permission to change their minds about what makes them happy. I think that it's so easy to get stuck on not even stuck, but to put yourself on a track and think like, oh, when I get there, then I'll be happy, and just feel like you're working so hard for this end result that's out, ahead. And I don't think we should live for instant gratification, but I think that there does come a point in time when you might look around and be like, I'm working so hard for this thing, but will that even be what makes me happy? Like, how can I be happy right now? And so a huge part of the book, I think, was just trying to encourage people to ask what would make them happy right now, like how to bring their happy place into their home. Like we've talked about, like it's nice to have a happy place that's somewhere you can vacation semi-regularly, but it's even better if you can truly love your day-to-day life, like the mundane pieces of it. So I hope it inspires people. Yeah.
Enjoy the passing clouds.
I think like the pandemic made us all just like our lives shrunk so abruptly that it was like, oh, do I like my life? So many people quit their jobs or moved to a new state. Like it, so that's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I want readers to give themselves permission to want something that maybe the rest of the world doesn't get, I guess, is the bottom line. Yeah.
Keep curious.
Yeah. And listen, I don't know. Sticking to your gut and listening to your gut. All of.
And I think what I got a lot from this as well, just to kind of add to that, my thoughts, is that I feel like when I give somebody permission to grow and change, I in turn give myself permission to grow and change. So it sounds altruistic. It ends up feeling kind of selfish because you're like, oh, well, this isn't who they are anymore. And that's okay. You're like, wait a second, well, who I used to be, that's okay. You know, even if people still have me saved as 25-year-old Jared or something. Yeah. Like, okay, give them that allowance. I think it helps us all.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you again. And everyone watching, Happy Place, please go run as fast as you can.
Pick it up.
Pick it up. We'll link it in stories. It's a book for everybody. I think it's inclusive. It's fun. It's an adventure. It's a great summer read. It's a great winter read. It's all about melancholy and deep joy and growth.
And for the guys out there like I am, if you want to understand sex a little more and learn how to be a better partner,
we're just gonna print that on the next printing. That quote is going on the cover from you. So
I think it's incredibly valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm gonna be a better husband.
That's so nice. Wow, what a compliment. Well, thank you both so much. This was seriously like a surreal honor, and I love so much that you guys do this and you make time to support other artists, and it's just so beautiful. And I appreciate you. You both are so clearly like genuine, real deal, and I just could not have loved talking to you more.
Oh my God. Well, we are just beyond thrilled and like just so excited and honored to be able to sit and chat with you. And
oh my gosh,
for you to make time because you're BFD, you know, and big fans over here. And
if you ever want to visit a secondary Midwest city, come on down.
I will let you know if and when I'm passing through. It would be so great to give you hugs in real life.
Love it.
We would.
Yes.
I'd love
that. And a hard-on copy of 96.
Yeah,
that's true.
This is a great writing environment, by the way.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You know how to do it?
Nope.
Make sure you say it.
Yep.